This is one of the challenges with Christian entrepreneurs. Some people think that it's noble to be broke.
This sucks building alone, but also I don't want anybody in my business.
And so I said, okay, well, I'll just use words like purpose driven and you know how we do. And God, he said no.
What advice do you have for people who do feel like it's wrong to want to make a lot of money? If you could build a podcast that reaches millions for one person in the Bible, who would it be and why? And you can't pick Jesus.
Oh, how would you ask me that?
Welcome back to Faithful Founder, where we get into real conversations about God, money, spirituality, and power, all through the lens of Bible and service. Today's guest has built his entire platform around one conviction, and he's trademarked it. So I want to say it exactly how he says it. Business is ministry. Not business with faith sprinkled on top of it. Faith infused into the whole thing, the way that infused water has the fruit running through like a glass of water instead of just like floating on top of it, okay? That's his own imagery, and it stuck with me since I first heard him use it. He goes by LZ the Entrepreneur, and his path here was not a straight line. He was a janitor, he's been an electrical engineer, he's been an operations leader in the C-suite space, and now he's a founder. And at every one of those steps, he says he's asked God the same question, is there more? And so today, he hosts the Daily Ground podcast, and it leads the Daily Crown Fellowship, which is a community that's built around one simple idea, that most Christian founders don't wake up intending to drift. It just happens one busy day at a time. So please welcome to Faithful Founder, LZ Flennard III.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So for the people who do not know who you are, what does business is ministry mean before we go deeper?
Yeah, what's funny is those three simple words have revolutionized the way that I think about business and the way that I think about ministry. You know, I'm very careful to not say that business as a ministry or business is like a ministry. It's very tight and definitive in just those three words. Business is ministry. And what that means to me is I was reading a book the other day, and it said that on average, just the average person influences 10,000 people in their lifetime. And I thought, that's a stadium, right? And so as founders, we influence a lot more than 10,000 people in our work. And for some of those people, we might be the only ministry or exposure to faith that they ever see or they ever get. And so how we interact with them, how we treat them, how we don't treat them, that has an impact. And so when I think about business is ministry, it literally guides how I do my work, how I think about my work, and how I think about the future of my work. So it's kind of a big deal in my world in terms of my philosophy and how I move.
Okay. So we might as well just go straight into the imagery I was referring to in the opening with the strawberry water, you know? Do you remember what I mean?
I do, exactly, because it's a thing. My family teases me all the time. I have right now upstairs, I trade it off. So this week it's grape. Some weeks it's strawberry, some weeks it's cucumber, some weeks it's a mixture. But I love fruit infused water. I don't know why. I just do. It just is one of those things where, you know, give me some fruit infused water and some popcorn and a burger, and I'm a happy guy. But the principle in it, right, is you have two things that you need to survive, right? And you infuse them together and they become this simple but powerful foundation to how you can do your work in a way that's effective and in a way that's fruitful. And so, you know, I love to drink it, but the principle and the concept of it is we're not doing this, or I don't do this because I think that if I say Jesus 7 times that it'll make my business explode. I do it because I feel called to connect faith to business in a way that's meaningful, in a way that's genuine, and in a way that's authentic. And for me, that's been a beautiful unlocking of just the possibilities and the release of potential that I can show up in my work as my full whole self. I don't have to be the faith driven LZ over here and then the all business LZ over here. No, it's the same person. It's the same guy. It's the same motivation, right? Everything from how I sell to how I offload clients to how I just treat people as I'm going to the post office, right? So it literally that concept of infusing sustenance into our work and to what we need to function as fruitful stewards. It's all encapsulated in that fruit infused waters, and it's really good. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I really like that imagery because it makes it crystal clear, like what it means to have a business where Jesus is sprinkled on top versus a business where Jesus is infused. And what you say about how it kind of used to be like separate, I experienced this as well. And a lot of people do. And I didn't realize that until I mentioned it one time over a year ago in a piece of content. And so many people were saying, yeah, I feel like it's weird to put them together. And so this is a very common thing that we struggle with as Christians. You talk about how when you were in different phases of your life, you were asking God, is this it? Like, is there more? I'm really curious what that felt like the first time you asked it. Were you feeling restless? Were you feeling grateful? Or was it both?
I think it's both. It's usually you start to get bored. I'm an entrepreneur. We get bored easily. You start to get not complacent, but you start to get you're content, right? Paul says that we, he's content in any circumstance, but you start to wonder, am I maximizing my fruitfulness? I guess is the best way that I can put it. And it's not from a place of ungratefulness. It's from a place of, God, am I really outputting everything that I need to be outputting to serve you well? I'm reminded of the parable of the talents. Some people get one, some people get two, some people hog all the talents and they can do a lot of stuff, right? But God wants us to use our talents and he wants us to multiply them. And so it's that need or that want to be honest and true to that. It's like, okay, if God gave me this business or if God gave me this position, I want to maximize it. And when my time is done, I want my time to be done and move to the next thing. Now, I will tell you, uncomfortable is a common and consistent state of being because you're constantly, being pushed and moved to the next thing. And every time you go to the next thing, you've never been there before, so you don't know what to expect. And so you have to go through that process of learning and understanding the challenges of that new level and that new stage. And so I think to answer your question, it's this feeling of, okay, what I've been assigned to do is done here or is wrapping up here. Now, what's the next thing? How do I go deeper? How do I go and become even more fruitful?
Okay. And along those lines, you talk about in your content the moment where it's like the shoreline's disappearing, like the moment where you can't go back after you've moved forward. I'm curious for you if there was an actual day or a specific decision, a moment where you knew you'd crossed that line and there's no way you were ever going to go backwards.
Yeah, there's been a couple. So the first one was when I quit my full-time job, and I'll never forget. I walked out. We had a little send-off, and I walked out and I got in my car, and I realized that because usually you have one last check that's coming the next week or so. And I realized that was the last time that I was going to actually know when my next check was coming. And, if it was just me, then okay, cool. But there's me, there's the wife, there's the kids, there's all the stuff. And it's like, okay, we're in it. And the other moment was, I'm 4, 5, 6 years into this full-time entrepreneurship thing. And I realized like, I am basically unemployable at this point. Like I'm in the middle of the ocean at this point. There is no going back. There's just ocean possibility and potential. And so it's a comforting thing in a way, because it's like, okay, cool. I know where to what mindset I need to have, and I need to, trust God for the next step, and just move fully into that, and not have my feet on the shore, or trying to reach the shore, but then trying to push the sail at the same time, because then you're divided and you get stuck. And so I think it's a really cool place to be. And I think that there's always going to be different seasons where you realize that you're even further in the ocean and up the mountain, if I can use that analogy. But then you look down and you're like, I can't see the ground anymore, so I might as well keep climbing. So that it's a really cool place to be. No less scary because it's new levels and new challenges. But I think it's a really cool place to be.
It is a cool place to be, but yeah, it's also very scary. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurship is a lesson in surrender, right? Because it's like, we really don't know when the next client is coming. So I'm curious, what is your relationship with surrender?
It's tough. It's tough, right? Because entrepreneurs, generally speaking, and I'm generalizing, but we like to be in control. We like to know that if I do this thing and this thing, this is going to be the outcome. But in entrepreneurship, sometimes you can do this thing, and this thing, and get this outcome. And the very next year, you can do the exact same actions and get a completely different outcome. It's like, wait a minute, I did the same thing I did last year, but the market is different now. People aren't searching Google as much as they used to. Now people are using ChatGPT. And so now this thing is going to give you a different outcome. So it's a constant challenge of figuring out where the market is, how they're behaving, what they need, and building relationships well enough that you can have that feedback loop to know where people see value and how that interacts with what you provide, and being able to not be like this sleazy car salesman, but be this person who has a relationship with enough people that you understand what they need when they need it, and then make them aware that what you do solves what they need, and work your business that way. But I think that, again, the challenge is the market. It changes so much, and it's changing faster and faster. Even 4 years ago, people wanted and needed something completely different than they do now. And now that seems to be cycling more and more quickly. So it's a challenge to stay uncomfortable and used to change.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of patience, because in one of your podcast episodes, you talk about, you use Abraham and Ishmael as an example of when you try to help God out. So can you describe what happens when you try to help God? And I'm curious if there's a specific moment in your journey where you did try to help God instead of being more patient and it cost you.
So you really did listen to some of
my
episodes. I think that one stood out to me because for a lot of reasons, and we could go into a whole another direction, but two things. He was old when God made that promise to him, like really old. And I thought it was interesting that his wife overheard the conversation, and she laughs. And God confronts her directly, says, well, why did you laugh? And at first she tries to say that she didn't laugh, but she's talking to God, so he kind of knows that she did. But the point is, in some ways, they were justified in laughing. It's like, wait, I'm past that age. I'm past that season. But yet you are making a promise that I would need to be in a different season for that promise to make sense. And they tried to help him out by, having their concubine or their maidservant have the baby instead, and Ishmael is born, and even though they messed up, they made the mistake, God still blessed Ishmael and his generations. But he told Abraham that's not the promise. I'll bless him, but that's not the promise. Isaac is the promise. And so I never forget, there was one time that God was really calling me to be faithful, and I heard him. But I kind of tried to use softer language because I was honestly and transparently, I was afraid. I was afraid that if I came out as this Christian business owner, faith-driven entrepreneur, that people wouldn't do business with me. And then it would be harder for me to build relationships and grow my business. And so I said, okay, well, I'll just use words like purpose driven, and you know how we do. And God, he said, no, I want you to serve Christian business owners. And so it took me a couple of times and a couple of iterations, but I would do things like try different communities, but just nothing would work. And eventually I'm a little slow, so I finally got it, and I was like, you know what? Okay. I am serving Christian business owners that want to grow their business God's way without drifting from their calling. Boom, I said it, and a really funny thing happened. We started to attract people that we were supposed to attract. And it was a really cool, group of relationships that it was faith forward. We could pray openly. We could talk about, insights that God has given us. And it was a watershed moment in a lot of ways, because I realized that if I just trust God, things are okay. Still going to be hard. They're not going to be easy just because you trust it, but they'll go the way that they're supposed to go. And as a man of faith, that's all I want. My desire is to fulfill the will of God, and more every day for my will to be the same as his. Not perfect. Sometimes my will is over there and his is here, and I have to kind of do that. But that's the process of, really honestly and genuinely seeking, what is your will for this business? Who are we sent to serve, and doing things that's in alignment with that. And so it almost every time when God makes that promise and I try to help him out, it never goes well. But the beautiful part of it is there's forgiveness in that, and there's restoration in that. And even though it might take you a little bit longer to get there now because you went left when you're supposed to go right, but God always helps bring it back to the center. So that's the beautiful part about it.
Okay, so speaking of purpose, something that I've heard you say is that profit is not the problem. Profit without purpose is the problem. Well, profit without purpose and stewardship is the problem. Why is that a problem?
I think again, this is one of the challenges with Christian entrepreneurs. Some people think that it's noble to be broke and poor and struggling, that means that you're faithful and it's just full of I don't know the word, that you're holy because your business is struggling. I just simply don't believe that, because the Bible in those days, most people were for the lack of a better term, they were business owners. They were tent makers. They sold spices. So most people were business owners. And I read about David, and David was not a poor guy. I read about Solomon. I read about, all of these, Abraham. I read about all of the builders in the Bible, and there are a lot of them. Job was so rich and wealthy that he lost everything, and then God gave him back double of everything. So the Bible is full of wealth and prosperity. The key is not to love and depend on that prosperity, and understand that God is the source, and that our love and affection and worship is to him and not what he's created. And I think that the danger is we start to believe that we're successful because of what we do, or our ideas or ideologies. And we forget that if God didn't give us the strength and the power to do anything, then we would not be able to do anything. And so I think that's a common challenge, because it's easy to get caught up in the accolades and the accomplishments. But I think the thing that keeps me grounded, at least, is understanding that, or having been in both circumstances. I've had a lot, I've had nothing, and so I understand what it's like to be in both places. And so it's like I realize that just as well as God has blessed me and the business is doing well, I've been in circumstances where it was the opposite. And so I know that God is my source, and, that money is a resource. Wealth is a multifaceted thing. It's not just financial. There's relationship wealth. There's wealth in your health. And there's other aspects of wealth that go beyond just financial. So I think just understanding that and being acutely aware of when you start to get off track is super important.
What advice do you have for people who do feel like it's wrong to want to make a lot of money, and so they don't ask for more, they don't push for more, they don't increase their prices, they don't market?
Yeah, I think the big thing when you're talking about pricing and value is understanding the value of the transformation. I'll give you an example. So one of the businesses that I run is a media management and a production company. I know that if I put together a show that is transformative and relational and brings in an engaged audience, I know that that's a 3 to 4 times multiplier on whatever that product or offer is. So if I have a client that's selling their offer for $5,000, I know one client is worth $20,000, right? And so I price my services accordingly because I've done the research and I've been doing it long enough to understand that the lifetime value of one client is X. And if we get 3 of those in a period of time, that's what the service is worth, versus saying, okay, well, I'm just going to charge $75 an hour because I don't believe that they are going to pay what that price is. So a lot of it is internal junk and internal noise, not valuing what we do enough to charge what we should charge. And some of it is fear because we're afraid that they won't pay it. And I can tell you that is not the case, because when people see value, the price is irrelevant. I know I've done it. There are certain things that if it's cheap, I just won't buy it because I want something that's quality. I want something that's going to last, and I want something that's going to improve the value of my life or my business. And so regardless of what the price is, if the value is there, then I'm willing to pay for it. And so I think as founders, we have to have that same mentality. We have to understand, we have to do our research, and we have to know what the lifetime value of their customer is and charge for the transformation and not by the hour or what we think they can afford.
For sure. And okay, for the person who is like all in on growth, they're like, okay, I've worked it up, I've worked up the gumption to increase my price point and all the things, but then they hit a slow period in the business. How do you know when a slow period is your patience being tested versus the offer or the messaging, for example, just being wrong?
Yeah, I think part of it is understanding the market. Like I'll give you an example. I hate to keep using myself in this example, but so there was a time where my funnel was tight. I knew if I talked to 100 people that are right fit people, 25 of them are going to set up a follow-up call and I'm going to close 5, right? Over time, the numbers bore that out. And that started to dip. It was like, okay, the conversations were now 80. The close rate was still the same, but now the conversations went from 100 to 80. It's like, okay, cool. Let's focus on the front of the funnel. How do we get in front of more right fit people so that we can maintain the front of the top of the funnel? So I think you have to understand, number one, that your funnel works, and you have to understand the dynamics and the percentages of your funnel. So like if, for example, the same 100 people I'm having those conversations with, I'm still talking to 25 people, but now I'm only closing 1 person. Now the problem is not the front of the funnel. The problem is the end of it. The problem is me because I'm not closing, right? And so now you have to start asking those questions like, okay, well, why? Is it because the market is down? Is it because my messaging needs to shift? And you just have to test. I'll ask people. At the point of my entrepreneurial journey is like, if they decide to move on, it's like, okay, great. Why? Why'd you decide to go with, X company instead of, and they'll tell you this, they'll say, well, the price was out of our budget. If you have 50 people that are telling you that the price is the problem, guess what the answer to the test is? The price is the problem. Now, when I say the price is the problem, that doesn't mean you need to lower your price. That's just information and data that you need to take and look at. Again, look at the market, look at what other people in your field industry are charging and say, okay, is the price broken for this person, or is the price shifting for the market? And I'll give you another example. So in production, for example, production has gotten cheaper and cheaper. When I first started, it was a premium because AI didn't exist and there weren't all these tools. You couldn't simply go online and edit audio and video. Now you can. And so again, we look at those signals. It's like we're still talking to the same amount of people, but now we can't charge X because the value of that has gone from here to here. And again, it's just a matter of really studying, analyzing the market, the data, and then asking questions to both your current clients and clients that decided not to go with you, and then fixing the right part of the funnel. So I hope that answers the question, but it's not as much as I wish it were, X plus 1 equals this. It really is an art and a science put together.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just seeing, okay, it's just like baking. So yeah, art and science. If it comes out and it's like too mushy, let's say you made brownies, it's like, okay, we need to like ease up on, I don't know, the fudge or whatever, or like use more flour. I don't know. So same thing with marketing. It's like, let's look at what went wrong and what can we tweak on the back end to fix that. So yeah. Let's talk about the 3 enemies. So you talk about 3 enemies: drifting, losing focus, and building alone. Of those 3 enemies, which one shows up the most for your clients?
So I have a maybe convoluted answer for you. So there's one that shows up the most, but there's one that people recognize the most. The one that shows up the most is drift. The one people recognize the most is probably focus. The one that people need the most is fellowship, and probably in that order. So focus is probably the most common because it's easier to recognize when you get off focus. Because again, going back to our funnel analogy, if you lose focus, your top of funnel might start to drift off a little bit. So now you're talking to 90 people instead of 100. That's more immediate because you see it. Drift is more subversive because by the time you realize that you've already drifted, and now you have to go back and figure out where did the drift start. So it's a little bit more difficult to kind of pinpoint. But building alone is, we were designed to be in community. And I don't know why, but a lot of times founders and entrepreneurs, we go at it alone. We're making decisions, we're, running the business, and we think we don't have time to be in community or to be in fellowship. But I would argue that you don't have time not to, because you know things that I don't know. You can see things from a perspective that I cannot see. I can't see if I have milk in my mustache unless I'm on camera, but you can. You can tell me, Elsie, you have milk in your mustache, and I can get it off of my mustache. But if I don't know, I go on the podcast and I do the whole show with milk in my mustache, right? And so it's those type of things that being in fellowship really helps us. It really shortcuts our ability to avoid potential potholes. So yeah, that order. I think drift is more common but less recognized. Focus is easier to see, and building alone is definitely, it's an epidemic, especially the more and more AI is used, and the social media is not so social anymore. I think fellowship is more and more important.
This is so true. I mean, the AI one, okay, yeah, that's obvious. People are having full-on conversations with ChatGPT. That's like their therapist and everything. But the social media one really stood out to me because, yeah, it's true. Social media is just now seen, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs as like the billboard for marketing, but it's not really a place where we build community, really, right? So I'm curious, like, what advice do you have for the entrepreneur who's like, this sucks building alone, but also I don't want anybody in my business because it's not pretty right now?
Yeah, I think that's the definite time that you need to allow people in, because number one, beauty is subjective. And number two, as founders, we have an innate ability to see the beauty in the most strange places. Like, some people can look at a really ugly business model and say, actually, this is a brilliant business model because nobody else is doing it this way, or the market is there's a blue ocean for this. And so I think having people to bounce ideas off of and to be vulnerable is it's a cheat code. It's a key to success, because a more experienced person, or a person who just sees things differently, can look at what you perceive to be ugly and say, well, no, actually, this is not an ugly duckling. This is a beautiful duckling. You just need to put it in the right pond. So I think it's an absolute cheat code to have people around you that can see that and that can push you and challenge you to do different and to do better and to think differently.
I like that quote so much. It's not an ugly duckling. It's not ugly. You just need to put it in the right pond. That's so good for business, because sometimes people are talking to the wrong market and they're like, no one wants my product. And it's like, well, you're talking to the wrong people, you know?
Yep,
So
exactly.
good. I feel inspired by that. So, I mean, I definitely should have asked you this earlier, but like, can you explain to the audience what exactly you help founders with?
Yeah, so essentially what we do is we help in three areas. We help founders grow in faith, we help them grow in focus, and we help them grow in fellowship. So we do that in a few different ways, but that's essentially the three pillars of what we do, because I know that as a faith-driven founder, it has to be the foundation. And so I preach like a Baptist preacher in Southern Louisiana. You got to do this stuff daily, and a lot of people have daily routines, but a lot of people don't. We need to be in worship. We need to be in our word, and we need to be meditating and praying every single day. That is the foundation of the day. And so we start there. We start with making sure that we are in alignment with where God has us in this season. And then we make sure that we're focused on the work that he has for us to do in this season. And then we do that in fellowship. And so in our own little unique way, we're approaching or attacking those three main enemies of Christian business owners is, are you growing in faith? Are you growing in focus and staying focused? And are you doing that in fellowship around people who can call you out? Like, I have friends that I can post something on Facebook and they could see it some kind of way, and I'm getting texts like, LZ, you good? You need us to, and they're checking on me, or I can, something that's good, and they're texting me or emailing congratulations. And so there are people in my life that not hold me accountable. And there are also people in my life that see what I'm doing from their perspective, and they're encouraging me and saying, well, this is really cool what you're doing, LZ. Have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? That type of thing. And that's, to be honest, that is invaluable, because there have been times where I was going in a direction and I got that text or that email and I was like, oh, I didn't really mean it that way or see it that way. And it helped me to course correct before I got off track. So yeah, that's our focus. And again, we do it in a few different ways, but that's our focus is, helping them grow in faith, grow in focus, and in fellowship.
One of those ways that you help them grow is by creating a platform like a podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Is that like one of your main offers, or like that people come to you for?
It's kind of become a side offer. It was kind of how I cut my teeth in entrepreneurship. Is, the first 5 years or so, that's all we did. In the past couple of years, we've shifted that to include the fellowship and the devotionals. But it's definitely part of what we do, because our message as Christian founders is super important. And I found that a lot of times we minimize how important it is to not only have that message, but structure it in a way that is consistent, in a way that is pointed, in a way that's aligned, and in a way that drives audience growth, so that people that you are assigned to serve can actually hear your message and, achieve the transformation that you're trying to achieve. And I'm a podcaster myself, so I'm always, giving out tips and helping people kind of think through, what a show could really do for their brand and their business.
Absolutely. Yes. And shows, it does so much more than like a reel, a 60-second thing can do, because people truly get to know you in longer form content. And the pendulum has already swung with social media anyway, to where people are craving more longer form content. So this really is the time to create a podcast or YouTube channel, whatever. So
and I think too, like the relationships, like even this conversation, I feel like I know you better than I did before we hopped on the show, right? And so now we've began a relationship, and hopefully, we continue it, and we introduce each other to other people, and it is just a really good way to build God's way. And God's way is through people, and it's through serving, and it's through relationship, and it's through adding value. And so I'm really, really high on shows, just because it's probably the best way to build relationships and to connect people.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the rapid fire question segment. Okay. So respond with the first thing that comes to mind. If you had to choose one for the rest of your life, infused water or plain water, which one do you choose?
Well, that's an easy one. Infused.
Interesting. So all the jobs that you had, right, from janitor to electrical engineer to C-suite to business, founder, which job actually taught you the most about leadership?
That, you know why that's a great question?
Yeah.
Because there's probably one job that I've ever liked. All the other jobs I hated, like literally. I did them because I had to. There was one job that I liked. That's not the job that taught me the most, though. The job that taught me the most was the one that I hated the most. And it taught me the most because I learned more about who I was as a person. And I learned that wasn't for me in terms of working for someone else. And it's funny because God made it so uncomfortable that I was almost forced out. So that would be my answer. It was my favorite job was my favorite, but it wasn't the one that taught me the most.
Which one was your least favorite? Everyone's wondering right now.
I feel like if I say, people might know where it is, but I'll say this. I'll say that it was a leadership position.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, no need to say more. Okay. In one word, describe what drift feels like in your body before you actually notice it in your business.
Busyness.
Interesting. So it's like constantly doing something, but you're really doing like nothing, right? Okay. If you could build a podcast that reaches millions for one person in the Bible, who would it be and why?
That's not a fair question.
And you can't pick Jesus. That's true.
And it's not going to be rapid. Holy smokes.
Okay, this one would be a long one.
One person so am I co-hosting, or is it about this person?
It's like they came to you as a client and you're helping them build their platform.
Oh, how would you ask me this?
No.
One person? Oh, Adam.
That would be an interesting to hear his perspective on contributing or being the reason for the fall of humanity.
Yeah.
Got
a lot of questions.
Oh my gosh, I would want to go on there and be like, dude, does this weigh on your heart heavy? Do you feel really guilty or what? Are you okay? Do you sleep at night? Yeah. Wow. That's good. Yeah.
I think a lot of people will be in the same boat. I think a lot of folks will have some questions for it.
Yeah. What's one question that you wish people asked you on podcasts?
What's one question I wish people asked me on podcasts? I don't know. I've done enough of these where I appreciate all questions. So I can't think of just one. But in general, I would say I appreciate the questions around the person behind the business. A lot of times we talk about business and funnels and sales and, ideas and ideologies, but we don't necessarily always dig into the human side of it. So I always appreciate those types of questions where people are trying to get to understand the craziness of the man that's behind all of the business and the ideas.
Well, what's something personal you'd like to share with the audience?
For me, one thing that I knew, there were two things when I was 13, 14 years old that I knew. I knew I wanted to be a business owner, and I knew I wanted a family because I didn't think I had the family that I deserved growing up. And so I knew those two things. And so God has been so gracious that he gave me both. Got a beautiful family. My daughter is going into her sophomore year at Indiana University. My son is thriving. He's a super genius, I think, and going into the 6th grade. And my lovely wife and I have been married now for 24 years. And so that is that's the apple of my eye, my family, and seeing them grow and thrive and become productive and fruitful humans has been an amazing process to watch somebody grow from tiny enough where you could hold them to being an adult and thriving. So that is one of the things that I could talk your head off about all day long.
That's beautiful. How has your family contributed to either the growth of your business or like the impact that you're making?
I think for me, and this would be one of the other potential potholes for entrepreneurs, because building a business is hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of spiritual, mental, emotional energy. And sometimes we can lose sight of what's most important. And so I've resolved myself to the fact that there are going to be opportunities I'm simply going to miss because my family's more important. In fact, there's one right now that I could take the work, make some money, but the easy answer is no, because I got family stuff. And I realize that might mean it might take longer to get certain places, but I've resolved that I'm okay with that because my priority is to them and to making sure that I'm there for them and that they know that they are the most important thing to me. So I would say in that way, they've helped me to shape how I approach this entrepreneurship thing. I'm not going to work 24/7 because the business is not the most important thing to me. My ministry of my family is my priority. So in that way, they've really shaped the type of founder that I am and that I try to be.
That is so good. And it's a beautiful example that you're setting for both of your kids too, to see that they can have it all, so to speak. Like they can run a wonderful business that makes an impact without having to hustle so much that they lose sight of family, So that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I don't mean to present myself as being perfect at all, because I've learned hard lessons about overworking myself and all of that good stuff. But it is my compass and my North Star.
Beautiful. What advice do you have for founders who maybe don't have a strong relationship with God, but really want to? They can't even get themselves to crack open the Bible without falling asleep 2 minutes in.
I always tell people, I always like to tell people, start in Genesis, because Genesis is such a beautiful story of beginnings, of trials and tribulations. So Genesis, Exodus, and then I would go to the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all the way through Acts, Romans, Corinthians, Thessalonians, and then stop at Hebrews, and then go back to Proverbs. I could probably listen to Proverbs just like an audiobook. I'll go to Proverbs, Psalms, and then from there go to Revelation, and then go to the major and minor prophets, and then the historical books. The historical books are hard. So-and-so begot so-and-so, begot so-and-so, begot so-and-so. He was 700. That's tough. And then the genealogies, do those last. I think if you do it in that order, it'll be easier, because then you can see it in the story, right? The beginning, the Exodus, and then, who is this Jesus guy? Why is he on the scene? Why does it matter? What, that type of thing. And then some of the main characters in the story, the major and minor prophets, and then how they play into the ultimate, ending of the story in Revelation. So I think if you read it that way, as a book that's a story, it's a movie that has many stories within it, and you see the people in the Bible as characters, and they're playing a part in building this narrative of God's plan to reconcile man back to himself. then things start to click and make sense. You're like, okay, cool. I understand now why LZ wants to do the podcast on Adam, because yeah, he kind of kicked this whole movie off, and how Jesus comes in and all that. So I think if you approach it like that, at least that helped me to put the pieces together so that, it wasn't so hard to read. But the Chronicles and those books are going to be tough. Don't start with those.
Yes. That's so good. So anyone who found that valuable, rewind and write down the order so that way you have it somewhere easy. That's good. I'm really glad that you stopped at Acts and then went elsewhere before going back to Revelations, because one of the pieces of advice that I give people is don't read Revelations as one of your first books.
No.
Please
don't do that first.
People are curious about it, so they go and read it, but then freak out because they haven't immersed themselves in God's grace and love for us. And so they're like, oh my gosh, I lied to my job last week. Am I going to burn in hell? It becomes a whole thing. So thank you.
Yeah, that's what I told my son. I was like, son, don't start in Revelation. start Genesis.
Yeah. And last but not least, where should someone go if they want to work with you?
The easiest place is just my website, lzflennard.com.
I'll put that in the description box below, along with your podcast link as well, so they can check it out. It is so incredibly educational and helpful without being too big brain. You know what I mean? It's not
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love it. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, of course.